Chinese education stocks listed in Hong Kong, they're also moving higher. New Oriental and its online subsidiary Koolearn, for example, well in the positive territory. China Education up 3%. Now let's bring in Kian Soon, his CEO and fund manager at Astral Asset Management. Kian Soon, thanks for joining us. So we see their education stocks positive, and all this is due to possible restrictions or changing of restrictions in Beijing after the sector was restricted for after-school tuition services. Now remember that this really puts the focus on new regulations in China as Beijing shifts focus when it comes to the country's economic trajectory. So how do you think these will affect the markets as we move forward and as we keep an eye on that high-level meeting happening in Beijing?
I think regulatory constraints or limitations have always played a key role in shaping the China-listed stocks. And we have seen what Beijing regulations have done on the online education sector recently. Is basically whipping out a big stick with a huge constraints. And I think the recent announcements to reissue licenses to the online tuition companies is good news. Probably it comes with more specifics and regulations on the timing and the kind of curriculum that you can offer to students. But overall, it's a very positive news for the sector because instead of closing it down permanently, which is not going to work in the Asian context, because parents desire all the kids to be more educated, to receive more curriculum. So, it's going to come as positive news for the entire sector. As you could see that even the listed education companies, which don't offer online tuition like the universities and the other private schools, are performing very well this morning.
Yeah, and Kian Soon, another thing aside from education that Asians like is property, right? And so we've been looking at the liquidity issue in China with the U.S. Federal Reserve. They're warning of a possible contagion risk to the global economy from China's property sector. Do you share this concern, and do you think investors should be worried about this?
I think these property sector issues have been boiling around for the last 2 to 3 months. Ever since Evergrande runs into financial troubles with his huge debt binge that I think the whole world has witnessed. There are 2 questions, right? Is it going to be a Lehman moment? I don't think so, because the property companies, unlike the global financial crisis, financial companies do have solid assets. They do have existing projects that are ongoing. Unfortunately, the leverage ratios is high. It's a matter of restructuring most of these companies who are in trouble. And the second question I think is important to ask is, would the Chinese government actually step in to help these companies? I think it's obvious that so far nothing has been done because these are private companies. The government has set the regulatory red line limits, which the property companies are not supposed to exceed, and leave it at that. And these companies are supposed to sort out their financial problems. And this could be done in the form of asset sales, like what we have seen in the troubled companies, as well as restructuring of the entire company's portfolio assets.
Kian Soon, let's turn our attention to emerging markets now, especially here in Southeast Asia. The COVID situation in the region seems to be stabilizing. Singapore, for one, has adjusted its travel classification for some of these countries after being heavily battered by the virus. Do you think it's time to buy into Southeast Asia stocks here in the emerging markets region?
Southeast Asia situation is a mixed bag because unlike Singapore, which is 85% vaccinated, a lot of the Southeast Asian countries are not highly vaccinated, given that there's a demand and supply problems for the vaccines. We have seen green shoots because as of yesterday, it was announced that there's vaccinated travel lanes between Malaysia and Singapore. I think this helps to open up the economies further across Southeast Asia. I think there will be further good news as the reopening and recovery team starts to emerge in this part of the world. And it will be a function of how the countries are implementing the vaccination. I think so far Singapore and Malaysia has done well, achieving more than 75% vaccination. The rest of the Southeast Asian countries are playing catch up. And definitely it will be a good news if the vaccination rates increase and the amount of travel and recovers across Southeast Asia.
Yeah, the region is trying to open up for its economy. The U.S. and the EU, for example, they are pushing forward with the reopening plans. China, though, still sticking with their COVID-0 strategy as infections creep higher. How do you think this will impact China markets and China stocks in the short term, especially that divergence of strategy as investors look to where they should put their money right now?
I think China's strategy is unique, but in a way, because of its huge domestic economy, it's going to work very well for them. Yes, so far worked very well. And not to forget, if China opens up, the kind of gaps between its healthcare systems, between the city and the rural areas are huge. So they might not be able to defend COVID if it spreads to the rural areas, and that's why they have chosen the more prudent approach. And given its large domestic economy, it could continue to function. As we have seen in the first half of 2021, their economy has grown more than 10%. In the third quarter, we are seeing a slowdown again. And I think all eyes will be on the fourth quarter and next year, how China is going to perform as they continue to adopt a COVID-0 strategy, which is different from other parts of the world.
Yeah, we'll keep
At the same time, not to forget, China that has now implemented more than 2 billion doses of vaccines on its citizens. As all the Chinese populations begin to get fully vaccinated, the strategy could be open for tweaking or changing.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the COVID situation there and how its economy is affected by that. Thanks so much for joining us today. Kian Soon, their CEO and fund manager at Astral Asset Management. And that's Asia First for today.
Don't forget headlines anytime at CNA.Asia.
Plus, we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Stay with us.